All right, this is the 1.2 lesson, but it's part 2. We're going to be measuring angles. We're going to be using a protractor. So you're going to be using a protractor throughout this class. This is one I just have at home. I prefer that you have the ones that are completely see-through. They are so much easier to work with. In the event that you are borrowing a protractor from our class stash during class, it is imperative for two things. One, that you return it in proper working condition, and two, that you return it to the bin. Make sure that you are not accidentally taking the supplies home with you, because we do need to have them in class all day long, available for every student. And in that case, I will be able to have supplies for you on a daily basis. All right, so just make sure that you are mindful to put things back correctly and that you put them back in good condition. All right, enough of that. Let's move on. How to use a protractor. Okay, so first things first, let's talk about, you have your protractor, and let's talk about angles, because we use a protractor to measure angles. We use a protractor to draw angles. We also use a compass to draw angles. You will need to be able to do both. So up at the top, I would like you to draw an angle that opens in this direction. And then I would like you to draw an angle that opens in that direction. Okay, so when an angle is opening this way, all right, your 0 degrees will start right here, and you are going to use the numbers that are on the inside of the protractor. Okay, so for instance, 0 will start down here. Okay, and you're going to use these numbers on the inside of the protractor. All right, so if you're going to open it this way, I know it says 180, but that is technically 0, and you're going to be using these numbers on the inside. If you use a protractor and then the angle is opening in this direction, 0 degrees is here, and you will use the outer numbers. Okay, so what does that look like? Well, you can see 0 is right here, and you'll use the numbers on the outside. So, to be honest with you, if you are drawing an angle yourself, I recommend highly that you draw angles like this so that it is easier for you to mark and measure on your protractor. Okay, this is the preferred way, just because the numbers are on the outside and it's easier to mark your protractor. If you do it this way, that is fine. All right, here we go. Put the protractor's center marker, that is usually a dot, like this, or it might even be, it's either a dot or maybe it's a dot and it's got these here, and it may just have something that looks like that. And you're going to put that on the angle's vertex. Okay, that's going to be on the angle's vertex. That's where your two lines meet. So this, again, that's your vertex right there. You're going to align the protractor's flat bottom line with the bottom ray of the angle. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is this. Not the bottom edge of the protractor, but the bottom flat line right here, okay? You're going to need to read the angle where the second ray crosses the protractor. And it's really important that you pay attention as to whether your angle is obtuse or acute. Remember, for obtuse, okay, you're going to have degrees from 91 to 180. And if it is an acute angle, you will be going from 0 to 90. So you need to make sure that you are very clear as to what type of angle you're talking about. All right, so let's go ahead and measure some angles, and I'll give you a couple of hints and tips. All right, so this angle right here, the very first thing that you should do is make note of what type of angle this is. This is an obtuse angle. All right. This one here, this is an acute angle. That goes back to this. Okay, what kind of numbers are you looking for? All right, so the next thing is this dot right here. That is your vertex. Let's just put a little V there for vertex. And this line right here is going to be lining up with this right here, this line right here, not the bottom of the protractor, but this line right there. So what that means is when I put this on here, okay, do you see how this arm doesn't touch the protractor? So I'm going to have to extend that. And then this arm is completely covered up, which is why I prefer that you have the clear ones. But if you are someone who absolutely wants the ones like this that are not clear, I'm going to show you what to do. So the very first thing that you're going to do is you're going to take the edge of your protractor, line it up with your vertex and the rest of the angle, okay? And then you want to extend the arm. And you want to go out pretty far, just like that. Okay, you're going to be extending the arm so that you can see it through your protractor. And then you need to do the same thing over on this side. Okay, and that means a lot of times when you're working with protractors and compasses, you're going to need to turn your paper. So we're going to extend this arm. I'm just going to make it go out like that. Hopefully that is far enough. All right, so now I'm going to put the center mark here, just like that. And then I'm going to look and see, oh, see, now I have an extension and I can line that up with the 180. You see how that lines up perfectly? Okay, and then, in fact, let me make this less, it looks a little fuzzy. 1 second. Okay, that's definitely much better. All right, so let's go back and take a look. The center mark is on the vertex, right? You can see that right in there. And then right here where it says 180, that's lined up with this line that I extended, right? So make sure it's perfectly lined up. Might take you a minute to get it perfect, or as perfect as you can. And then over here, now that you've extended this line, you can see right here, you can see that it goes all the way out, right? So what we're going to need to do is, since it's opening up in this direction, okay, since it's opening up like this, I'm going to use the numbers on the inside, and I can see that this goes to 120. So that's right there, and I'm going to write 120 degrees. Please do not forget your degree symbol. If you forget the degree symbol, we don't know if you're talking about degrees, inches, centimeters, fluffy bunnies. We really need to know that you're talking about degrees. Okay, so that's how you measure an obtuse one. For an acute one, I'm going to use a different color because I'm going to extend these lines again. So I'm going to start here at my vertex, and I'm going to line it up against the arm of the angle, and I'm just going to make sure it's nice and straight, and I'm going to go out pretty far like this. And then I'm going to do the same thing for this bottom one. So I'm going to line this up, and I want to go out as far as I can, and that's why I'm using two different colors, and that way I can keep everything straight. So those arms are quite long now, and I should be able to see them past my protractor. So now I'm going to put my center. So I'm going to put a little dot here. This vertex, I'm going to put my center mark on that vertex. And then I want to come over here, and I want to make sure that the 0 is lined up with that line that I drew out here. And then I'm going to look and see where the extension goes. Now, since it's opening up this direction, like we have up here, I have to use the outer numbers. So I'm going to use the outer numbers, and I'm going to go from 0. I'm going to follow it all the way around, and that's going to be 80 degrees. So this is 80 degrees. And then before I go anywhere else, I'm going to look, is 120 bigger than 90 degrees? Yes. Is 80 less than 90 degrees? Yes. So you're making sure that you've accounted for the fact that it's obtuse or acute. Okay, so let's go do that again down here, and I'm going to do the same thing. I am going to extend the arms. All right, so I'm going to line that up and make sure that I get a nice extension right there. Okay, there's that one. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the lower one. Gonna line this up, and then I'm gonna extend the arm. Okay, so just like that. Now, if you want, while you're in the process of doing that, you can go ahead and come over here and just go ahead and get that lined up and extended since you're already in that process. We'll do the same thing down here. Okay. All right, so now both angles, I've extended all of the arms. Okay, so this one here, this is an acute angle, which means it has to be less than 90. Okay, this one over here is obtuse, which means it has to be larger than 90. Okay, so make note of that. And then the next thing I'm going to do is actually measure. If my angle is opening up that way, I'm going to use my inner numbers. And if my angle is opening this way, I'm going to use my outer numbers. All right, so until you are getting all of your angles correct every time, you might want to write down these kinds of things to help you remember when you're measuring. All right, let's go ahead and measure. I'm going to put my vertex in the center of my protractor, just like that. And then I'm going to line up this end over here. Now, I know it says 180, but remember that that is acting as a 0. Okay, and so I'm going to use these inner numbers right here, making sure I didn't move it. There we go. And then on the inside, you can see that it goes to 30 degrees. 30 degrees is less than 90, so I'm pretty confident that that is correct. Over here, I'm going to do the same thing. Have my little vertex, put my center on the vertex, and I'm going to line up this arm out here with that line of 0. And then I'm going to make sure everything's centered and lined up. And then I'm going to follow the arm that's extended. And then there we go. We're at 110. 110 is indeed bigger than 90. So I'm pretty confident that those are correct. Okay, so on the next page, now we're going to draw. So on the previous page, we measured, okay? Now we're going to learn how to use the protractor to draw. So we're using the protractor. There will be times where you draw an angle with a compass, 2 entirely different processes. So this is 53 degrees. That is going to be acute. 92, that is obtuse. 138 is also obtuse. And 17 is acute. All right, now I am going to draw all of my angles like this so that I can use the outer numbers. It'll be easier for me, and there's the 0. Okay, so that's just my personal opinion. So here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line along the bottom edge of my protractor, just like that. And I'm going to put my vertex there and an arrow right here. Okay, then right here, I'm not measuring. So if this gets covered up, it's okay. But I need to be able to see that. Actually, it's not okay. Let's put our 0 here. Let's put our vertex right out there. Okay, so I'm going to have to extend that a little bit, actually. Okay. All right, so we're going to make our vertex over here. Okay. So I should be able to put my vertex there and then line up right here with my 0. Everybody see that? Okay, so now I'm looking for 53 degrees. I go on the outside. There's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. And then I need 3 more. 1, 2, 3. So 53, and I'm going to put a tiny little mark right out there. See that? Okay, so be very mindful as where you put it. Okay, so right here. And then the easy part, you take that little mark you made and you line it up with your vertex, and you're going to draw a line between those 2 points. So we're going to go like this, and we're going to put a little arrow there. Okay. And then we know that from here to here, we know is 53 degrees. Okay. So that is when we're doing an acute angle. Let's go ahead and do D. That's another one. That's an acute angle. Let's do that again. Okay. So the easiest thing to do, especially if you have one of these non-see-through, is I'm going to put my little vertex dot right in there, and I'm going to mark the 0. Okay, so I know how far I need to go. So there's my vertex, and I need to go at least that far. Put an arrow. All right. So now I know for a fact that I will be able to see that. Put my protractor back on the vertex, line it up with the line that I drew, and then I'm going to go find 17. So I start out here where 0 is. Here's 10. This line right here is 15, and then I need to go 2 more, so that's 17 right there. So I'm going to put a little mark there, and then I'm going to take my paper. I like to turn my paper every chance I get, and I'm going to line that mark up with my vertex, and I'm going to draw just like that. Okay, and now I know that from here to here is 17 degrees, right? You cannot draw angles when we give you a very, very, very specific measurement. You can't draw these freehand. If you're just being told to sketch, like sketch angle ABC, that's fine. Because there's no measurement, we don't care how big it is, it's fine. But when you have a very specific measurement given to you, and we tell you to draw an angle, you must use the protractor. Or when we teach you how to draw an angle with the compass, then you'll draw an angle with the compass. All right, let's do the ones that are obtuse. I'm going to do these in red, and I'm going to pretty much do the same thing. I'm going to put my protractor down, and I want to make a little vertex point. I'm going to come out here, put a little mark at 0. Then I'm going to make a line, and I want to go past the mark that I made. I just like to make sure that I can see everything. Okay. So put my paper back down. All right, now we line up our vertex and our 0 right here. Okay, let me make sure that's lined up. Looks good to me. And then right up here is 90, and I need to go to 92, so I'm just going to go 2 more little marks. I'm going to put a little mark right there. And then from that mark to the vertex, start at the vertex or the mark, it doesn't matter. I like to go past, and I always like to start at the vertex. And so from here to here, I know is 92 degrees. Now this looks like a 90-degree angle. This is another reason why I said the other day that you cannot assume that an angle is 90 degrees. You have to measure it. Okay, let's do our last obtuse angle. I'm just going to do that down here. We're going to need 138. Okay, actually, let's put it in here. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to make my vertex mark. I'm going to make my 0 mark. Okay, and then line them up. Okay, I'm going to go start at the vertex and go past that. Okay, then I'm going to put my vertex back in that mark, line up my 0. Okay, so everything is lined up nice and neat. Then I'm going to go on the outside right here, and I'm following along with my finger. Here's 90. So then there's 100, 110, 120, 130, 135, here's 40, and I can go backwards 2, or I can find 135 and go forwards 3. So there's 138, like right here. And then I'm going to go line up the vertex in that mark, start at my vertex, make sure everything's lined up, and then I'm going to draw. And so now I know that this is 138 degrees. Okay, so that's how I draw angles. I always draw them opening up in that direction so that I can use the outside numbers. I find it easier. I find that I am more accurate and I'm less likely to make a mistake. Okay, so now we're going to construct angles. Construct starts with a C. Constructing an angle is essentially copying an angle. And copy starts with C. And so we're going to use our compass, which also starts with C. So when we say to construct an angle, you're making a copy, you use your compass. All three things start with C. So let's talk about what the copy of an angle is. Congruent angles definition. Congruent angles, now remember the symbol for congruent is an equal sign with a little wave on top. Congruent angles definition. Congruent angles are angles that have the exact same measure. Okay, they have the exact same measure. They look exactly the same. They're like twins. Then, if you bisect an angle, okay, so bi means two, like bicycle, biped, all right. An angle bisector is a line. So remember, a line has arrows on both ends. A ray has a definite endpoint and goes to infinity, or a segment, which doesn't have any arrows, just points, is a line, a ray, or a segment that divides an angle into two equal angles. So essentially, it's cutting an angle perfectly in half, creating two congruent angles. All right, so let's go ahead and let's work on that. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to learn how to construct an angle. We're going to learn how to copy it, and we're going to be using a compass. All right, so here we go. The goal is to construct an angle congruent to this angle right here. This is angle A, okay? And we're going to not use the protractor. So you can't use this, all right? So no protractor. So a lot of students try to just measure this and draw an angle based on what they measured, but we're not going to do that. You have to be able to construct it because you're going to need that skill later in the course. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to draw. This is step number 1. Okay, step number 1 is we're going to draw a ray. Now this is A, so we're going to label this as B. We're going to make a little endpoint, and we're going to go towards infinity, and we're going to label it with a B. So we're going toward infinity. So this right here and this right here, those are going to be, that's what you're doing here. Then you're going to place your compass on point A right here. You're going to place your compass on point A. And you're going to draw a line with your compass, this. Okay, so this is step 2 right here. You're going to draw this arc. That's what this is. It's an arc, and it's going to intersect this arm, and it's going to intersect this arm. And we're going to label these as C and D. All right, so we're going to make a little arc, and then we're going to label it. And then we're going to come over here, and we're going to do it again. We're going to keep the same distance. So from here to here, we're going to leave our compass the same measurement. We're not going to change its width. And we're going to start at B, and we're going to just go like this with our compass. And we're going to label that as an E. Okay. That right there is going to allow us then to make an arm. Okay, so then the next thing is we're going to put our compass at D, and then we're going to draw this little arc over here where these two intersect. We're going to draw that. So that's going to be like little 4. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing over here where E was, and then we're going to draw this. Okay, so that's step 5. These are your directions, and we're going to do this several times together, and by the time we're done, you'll have a better handle on what those mean and how to do that. Okay, so let's go ahead. All right, let's go ahead and start this process. Now, if you're using one of the orange or blue safety compasses, it has a built-in straight edge, and if you are not, you will need a ruler of some kind or some kind of straight edge. So I'm going to use the straight edge of my protractor, but I'm not measuring anything. I'm literally just going to take the straight edge of my protractor, and I'm going to draw a line that looks like that. Okay, so this is a P. I'm going to go ahead. I can do P prime, or I could even do Q. Okay, so just like that. So that is step 1 from above. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take my compass. Now I'm showing you a traditional compass. If you're using the safety compass, you'll put the center dot here, and then you'll find a dot in the arm that will go about right there. Okay, so I'm going to put the pointed end of this compass right here, and I'm going to make my arm of my compass just come out here, and then I am going to hold this. I personally like to turn my paper, so I'm going to let this sit down on the paper just like that, and then I'm going to turn the paper, and I get a nice smooth line just like that. I'm not going to change this width. I'm going to leave it just like that. Okay, so I'm going to come over here, put that point right here on the vertex. Okay, I'm going to set the pencil part down on the paper, and then I'm just going to pull my page toward me like this. And again, I get a nice smooth line. Okay, so that's P, that's Q. This can be R, and this can be S. Okay, this will be T. So P, Q, R, S, T. Now, this part here is going to take a little bit of maneuvering. I'm going to put the point of my compass here on R, and I'm going to get the width that will send the compass up here to S. See how it's too wide? So I'm going to make my compass smaller, and I want it to be able to sit on the S. So like that. Everybody see that? Okay. So we're going to sit it on R and sit it on S. You can make your compass as wide or narrow as you need it. And then, okay, have that there. And then I'm going to pull the paper toward me, just like that. And I'm going to get that kind of line. I need to see this arc and this arc. and this arc. I'm going to come over here on this side. I'm going to put the key, and then way of your paper, it will mess you up. But that's okay. This is fine. This is going to be Q. This will be R, and then this one over here will be S. So QRS. This width right here, I'm not going to change it. I'm going to come over here to this line. I'm going to come slightly below it, drop the pencil onto the paper, and then pick up the paper and just spin it like this. Okay. In fact, my computer is still in the way, so I'm going to do it like this. Okay, there we go. So I put it here, and then I spun the paper toward me. So this is A, this will be B. All right. Now, to get from here to here, I have to change the width. So I'm going to put my point on the R, and I'm going to change the width of my compass so that I get over to the S, just like that. And I'm going to drop the pencil kind of down over here, pick up my paper, and just go like that. See how it doesn't quite go through my point? Let me make sure that I did that correctly. Probably need to make it just a slightly bigger. Okay, let's do that again. Drop it below and just turn my paper. There it is. Okay, so now the width is correct. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to put the point on B. And I'm going to go right below this line over here, this arc. Drop it down onto the paper. And then I'm going to pull the paper toward me, and it'll make another arc. So this is QRS. This is going to be A, B, and C. Just like that. Okay. And then I'm going to take my straight edge, and I'm going to line up the A and the C, and I'm going to draw my arm. Draw that side. So these are now congruent. Okay. All right. So let's do that again. Okay. So this one looks pretty similar to that one, but that's okay. I'm going to, step one, I'm going to draw a ray, and then I'm going to put a vertex on it. I'm going to call it A. All right. Then I'm going to come over here. See how this is too wide? I'm going to put the point on my vertex, and I'm going to make my compass smaller. Okay. And then I'm going to put it on the paper just below, like right down here. Pick up the edge of my paper, spin my paper so that I get a nice smooth arc. Okay, so this is Q, this is R, this is S. I'm going to come over here, put my point on A. I'm going to drop the pencil below that line on the paper, pick up the edge of the paper, and then I'm going to pull the paper toward me, making it kind of a big circle, just like that. This point right here is B. Okay, so I've copied the ray, and I've copied that point. Now I'm going to copy this one. So let's put our point on R. We're going to open up our compass. Okay, so just like that. See how that's right there? Okay, but I'm going to go a little bit below that. Make sure the pencil is on the paper. Pick up the edge of the paper, pull it toward me. Nice smooth arc right there. So this is the width that I need. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to put the point on B. I'm going to put my pencil on the paper below that arc. And then I'm going to pick up the side of the paper, pull it toward me, just like that. Okay, so this is C. And now that I have that, I can draw from the vertex through that intersection. So this is congruent to that. Okay. All right, let's go practice number 3. Now we're going to be making an acute angle. Okay, so far we've done an obtuse angle, an obtuse angle. This is an acute angle. So I'm going to draw a line. I'm going to put an arrow. I'm going to turn this into A. Over here, let's just go ahead and continue with the Q. You know, why not? So here we go. I'm going to make my compass smaller. I'm going to put the point on the vertex. I'm going to drop the pencil about right here on the paper. Pick up the edge of the paper. Pull the paper toward me, just like that. This is going to be an R. This will be an S. Okay, so I know how wide this needs to be. Come over here, point on A, drop your pencil about right here onto the paper, pick up the edge of the paper, pull the paper towards you. So again, I'm never really moving my compass. So I see students all the time trying to move their compasses, and then the compass changes its width and it moves and they get really frustrated. Notice I'm not doing that. I'm moving the paper. That actually helps me keep everything perfect. So this will be B. All right, now we need to figure out where C is. So I'm going to turn my paper like this, put my point on R, and wow, I got lucky. Check that out. I actually don't even have to move the width of my compass. If you do, you need to change the width of your compass so that you can bridge this. So I don't need to change it. I'm going to drop the pencil out here, make sure it's on the paper, pick up the side of the paper, and just do a smooth turn toward me. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing over here. Here's B. Compass is on B. I'm going to put the pencil on the paper out here. And then I'm going to pick up the side of the paper and pull it toward me. And now I have that arc. And this is C. And then I can grab the straight edge and move from A to C and put my arrow. So these are congruent. And now we have one more. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and call this Q. I need one more. Draw my arrow here, my vertex there, call it A. Let's see if I need to adjust my compass. Yeah, I think I need to make it a little smaller. Okay, so vertex, pencil, drop it a little bit below the line, pick up the edge of the paper, make sure this pencil is on the paper, pull the paper toward me like that. Okay, so this will be R and this will be S. This width, double check it, move it over here, place your point, place your pencil below the line, make sure it's touching the paper, pick up the side, turn the paper toward you, like that. This is B. Okay, let's figure out the width from R to S. I'm going to put my point on R. Obviously, I'm not far enough, so I'm going to make my compass bigger. Get to S, right there. Okay, drop it below, like right in here. Make sure the paper and the pencil are touching. Pick up the side of the paper, pull it towards you. One nice smooth move. Okay. Then I'm going to do that over here. The point is on B. Put my pencil out here. Make sure it's touching the paper. Pick up the paper. Turn it toward me. And then this is going to be C. And then I can draw the other side of the angle. Just like that. So this is constructing an angle. So far we have measured and constructed an angle. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the video, and I'll do a part 3 that will have us bisecting the angles. All right, see you in a minute.